Hello, hello, hello. How are y'all doing today? Thanks for being here. Because of all the places that you could be right now, I am so glad that you are here with me today. So, welcome to today's true crime episode. My name is Barb, and today we are going to be discussing the murder of Joann Katrinak. Now, Joann was born Joann Marie O'Connor in October 11th of 1968 in Hackettstown, New Jersey. She was the youngest of four children, and according to her mother, the full, fluffy-haired little girl with olive skin and a pretty face made every effort to look perfectly groomed even when she took out the trash. She was likable, fun, beautiful, and she was always happy. Her parents were David and Sally O'Connor from New York. Unfortunately, David passed away in 1996 and Sally passed away in 2019. Joann was briefly married to a man, Michael Jack, in 1991, but the marriage was short-lived. It ended in divorce after only a few months, and people have said that it was an unhappy and abusive relationship. But in April of 1992, 23-year-old Joann met 37-year-old Andrew Katrinak at a club in Allentown, Pennsylvania. They quickly fell in love, and she moved into his home at Front Street in Catasauqua, and they were married by the following spring. Andrew had previously worked as a semi-pro boxer in Las Vegas in his youth, and he later settled into his own construction business. Joann gave birth to their only child, a son named Alex, on October 21st, 1994, and Joann and Alex would disappear less than 4 months later. Andrew was born on September 1st, 1954. His parents were Veronica, who passed away September 10th, 2011, and his father Andrew, who passed away January 21st, 2015, at 88 years old. He was a retired Bethlehem Steel foreman and a U.S. Marine who served in the Korean War. But before we get too far into this story, I would like to take this time to ask you, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel and hit that thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate it. It absolutely helps me out a lot. So back to the story. Before Andrew met Joann, he was in an on-again, off-again relationship with a woman named Patricia Rohrer. Patricia was born January 24th, 1964, in Phillipsburg, New Jersey. She dropped out of high school in 1981 at just 17 years old, got married to a landscaper named Gary Gabbard, and Patricia had a baby, but unfortunately that baby passed away at just 3.5 months old from SIDS. Now, her and her husband worked 12-hour graveyard shifts at a textile factory, and while they were at work, her mother cared for their baby while he was still here, baby Charles. Gary said his wife, Patricia, was a cold woman, always looking for a fight. Once, when a gun-wielding farmer and his buddy caught Patricia and Gary riding motorcycles in his field, Patricia got in their faces and argued, and her marriage ended shortly after. Now, Patricia met Andrew in 1984 at a restaurant, and in 1987, she moved into Andrew's home and lived there for 2 years until they broke up in 1989. They remained friends, and they continued to talk on the phone and actually rekindled their relationship twice. Once for about a week in 1990, and another time in 1991 when she showed up at his door unannounced. Now, Patricia had another boyfriend, Conrad Hewitt, when she left Andrew, and this boyfriend was once arrested for assaulting her, and she had another altercation with him when he was released from jail. Goes to show you what type of person Patricia was and what she got herself into. So after this happened, Patricia went to Andrew's home, and she stayed in his home for a few days to recover and to hide out. And after this, she defaulted on her mortgage, and she decided she was going to move to Linwood, North Carolina. Now, her professional life included short-lived gigs as a Century 21 real estate agent and an Oldsmobile salesperson. And in North Carolina, she reportedly enjoyed some success as a horse trader, a riding instructor, and a rodeo competitor. In April of 1994, Patricia called Andrew for the first time in over a year. It was during this call that Andrew told Patricia about his marriage to Joann. Patricia later called Andrew in December of 1995, and at this time, she learned on this phone call about the birth of their baby, Alex Martin, Andrew and Joann's son. Andrew later said that Patricia sounded depressed over this. However, she stated she was happy for him, but she also sounded a little surprised. Andrew said he received one more phone call from Patricia after this on Thursday, December 12th, 1994, which was just 3 days before Joann and their son Alex disappeared. And according to Andrew, Joann answered the phone call, and when Patricia asked for Andrew, Joann told her that he was married and had a child and told her to never call there again, and she hung up on her. Now, as for the words that were exchanged on that call, Joann told Andrew that Patricia had used profanity, but later Patricia stated that it was the other way around. But both sides do agree that Joann hung up on Patricia. Phone records did show that the Katrinaks did receive a call from an unidentified phone number on December 12th, followed up immediately by 3 unanswered calls from that same phone number. Patricia's home phone records show numerous calls every day except for December 11th through the 16th. Now, on December 15th, Andrew said goodbye to Joann at 6:30 in the morning when he left for work. Joann was supposed to have a shopping trip with her mother-in-law Veronica later that day. And at one point, Joann called her at about 1:15 to tell her that her and the baby would be leaving soon and they were going to be on their way to pick her up. But Joann and the baby never arrived. Veronica did try calling the house that afternoon, but there was never any answer. Andrew didn't get home from work that night till 6:30 p.m., thinking Joann and the baby were going to be there, and when they weren't, he just figured that they were held up shopping and also assumed there was heavy traffic due to the holiday season. Andrew watched some TV, drank a few beers, and he waited about 2 hours before he called his mother to check on everybody. Veronica told him that Joann and the baby never showed up, so he began making phone calls looking for them. Both Andrew and Joann's parents both showed up at the house to help him look for her. And at about 10:30 that night, he had realized that his basement door lock was damaged, and he called police. And when police arrived, the families insisted that Joann and the baby had to have been abducted. The officers said that it was more likely that Joann left on her own. They said that maybe she took the money she had saved for Christmas gifts to start a new life with somebody else. Andrew showed them the exterior of the basement door where the lock was pried away from the door frame, and he had also realized that the phone line in the basement had been cut. And the police didn't seem concerned. And the police actually had him spliced back together the phone line. And they were looking closely at Andrew for why Joann and the baby were missing. The police refused to search for Joann and the baby, and Alex and the family went out to do so. Well, Alex didn't go out to do so. Andrew went out to do so. The family found Joann's 1992 tan Toyota across the street from their house at McCarty's Tavern parking lot, and they called the police back to tell them. The hood of the car was cold, indicating that it had been sitting there for several hours, and her family noted to the police that the car was backed into the parking spot, saying that was something that Joann never did. The car was locked, the keys were in the car, as well as the baby's car seat, and some other items were left in the car. Now, an officer advised Andrew, unbelievable, he advised Andrew to go get the second set of keys to the car and told him to drive the car home. Now, thankfully, Andrew refused, saying that he was worried about ruining potential evidence. And one officer opened up the car and was going to reach in to grab something. And Joann's sister was there, and she yelled at him to stop, which he did. Now, the next day, Pennsylvania State Police impounded Joann's car to collect evidence, while other officers canvassed the neighborhood for witnesses. Nobody reported seeing anything suspicious, even though this suspected abduction potentially took place on their busy street in broad daylight. The state police did have luck in finding evidence in the car, however. They found 6 8-inch long blonde hairs on the car's driver's seat headrest. And the hair color closer to the root of that hair was brunette, although the hair itself had been dyed blonde. And that, combined with the hair's length, meant that most likely the hair came from a female. Excuse me. Now, Andrew was still the investigators' primary suspect. He offered anything he could to clear himself so that they could focus on finding his wife and son. Joann only had a small life insurance policy, and they had no debts, so getting rid of her to collect life insurance money was out of the question. There was no activity on her bank account or credit cards after the day she went missing, so investigators dismissed the theory that she took the child and left. And there was no evidence of any affairs outside of the marriage. And Andrew's alibi at the time of the disappearance was that he was working on a home addition with his father, and there was no evidence suggesting otherwise. And Andrew took 2 polygraph tests, and he passed both of them. Now, Joann's ex-husband, Michael Jack, who was in New Jersey, police checked with him, and they cleared him by his alibi as well. Now, at this point, police visited Andrew's ex-girlfriend, Patricia Rohrer, and she gave them information that implicated Andrew. She told police about all the unsuccessful attempts to become pregnant while she was dating him, and she believed he was infertile. She said she couldn't be the one infertile because she had already previously had a child. She claimed Andrew must have killed Joann and Alex because Alex could not have been his, saying that he must have found out Alex wasn't his because he was infertile. Police decided to conduct a fertility test with Andrew, to which he willingly submitted to, and Patricia was wrong. Andrew could indeed father a child, and therefore her accusation about him killing his wife and son for that reason kind of stuck in investigators' minds. Now, it was 5 long, agonizing months until Joann and baby Alex were found in an extremely remote area in Heidelberg Township, about 15 miles west of the Katrinak's home, which was in Catasauqua. A farmer by the name of Paul Kovalchik was plowing his land on April 19th, 1995, when he noticed what he first thought was a pile of garbage at the edge of his field. He was used to people dumping things on his property, so he went up to it to check it out and wanted to see if there was trash with people's names and addresses on it, as there sometimes was, and he would turn that information over to police. But when he reached it, he realized that was not the case and that it was 2 bodies. Joann was still wearing her leather jacket, and she was lying on her back. Alex was wearing a baby blue sleeper, and he was laying face down on top of her stomach. One person at the scene saying, almost like putting him back in the womb. Now, their bodies were found along a trail used by horseback riders. Investigators say someone drove up to that site and took the bodies in about 50 feet. There were various objects nearby, such as Alex's bottle, a rattle, and a diaper bag, like Joann must have dropped them while being walked in. When Andrew seen the area where his wife and son's bodies were, he remembered that Patricia rode horses on that same trail and that she had managed a horse stable about a mile away. So he obviously told police. Now, Joann's identity was confirmed through dental records, and an autopsy revealed she was shot once below her right eye with a .22 caliber gun, and she had received 19 blows around her head and her face with a blunt object. The shell casing was never found, but the bullet that was inside Joann was warped, making ballistic testing extremely difficult, even if the murder weapon would ever be found. And they say Alex died either from suffocation or exposure. They couldn't tell. A forensic team did collect 2 hairs from the scene, and they analyzed insect activity at the site to try and help determine time of death, but they were only able to narrow it down from mid-December 94 through February of 95. Joann's Christmas money was still on her, so robbery was not a motive. And little Alex didn't make it to 4 months old. And coincidentally, he was the same age as the baby that Patricia had lost a decade before. In April 1995, the family buried Joann and Alex in a single bronze casket. Now, at this point, Patricia quickly rose to the top of the suspect list, and her alibi she gave for December 15th quickly fell apart. She claimed she spent the afternoon at a tanning salon. However, that salon she claimed to be at was closed that day. She also claimed she spent the evening at a private dance club, but at this particular dance club, you had to show your membership ID to sign in, and there was no record of her being there that night. However, her fiancé and his friend testified she was there with them that night, but there was record of them signing in to that club, but not her. So Patricia also claimed she never owned a gun, but her ex-boyfriend, Walter Baylock, said he remembered her buying a .22 Jennings chrome-plated handgun at a yard sale for $50. He said Patricia always had it with her, and she even once pulled it on him during an argument. So he knew she had one. Walter Baylock, the man, no, ignore me. The man who ran the yard sale confirmed that Patricia bought the gun from him, and investigators were able to acquire a copy of the cash check that Patricia wrote that man for the gun. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Her own mother acknowledged that Patricia had a .22 handgun, saying that Patricia gave her that gun in May of 1995, but she couldn't say why. Her mother also couldn't explain why one day she decided to take that gun to work with her and then realized she couldn't because she drove a school bus. So she dropped that gun off with her sister-in-law, Sandra Ireland. Now, Sandra said that Patricia's mother asked her to hold the gun for her, but Sandra's husband was very uncomfortable with the gun being there, and he buried the gun in the yard. At some point, Patricia's mother retrieved the gun, but nobody could remember when that was or even what happened to that gun afterward. Police searched Patricia's North Carolina home on July 24th, 1995, but they were unable to find the gun. Bear with me a second here. Police, they couldn't find the gun, but they did, however, recover some .22 shell casings in her backyard. But they couldn't be tested due to the quality of the bullet that was found in Joann's skull. When police questioned her about the found shell casings, she claimed that her ex-boyfriend, Walter, owned the gun and that he took it with him when he moved out in December of 94. And when they were investigating Patricia, police uncovered a rather long rap sheet against her, which included breaking and entering, public intoxication, cruelty to animals, larceny, and a shoplifting charge that she received 12 months probation for. Take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But it goes to show what type of person she is, I guess. Now, Patricia was a brunette. Remember the roots of the hair. However, police uncovered a photo that was taken of her just 11 days before Joann and Alex went missing. And Patricia's hair in that photo was dyed blonde. Officers obtained a warrant to collect hair and blood samples from Patricia, and her hairs were matched to the hairs found in Joann's car using mitochondrial DNA technology. With the technology at that time, only one of the hairs actually had a root attached to it, and nuclear testing would have destroyed that one hair. A mitochondrial test required less genetic material and could be used on one of the other hairs to rule Patricia in or out as a potential match. Now, results concluded that Patricia could not be excluded as the hair's owner. The lab conducted scientific reliability tests on the results for more than 1 year afterward to confirm these results, since the science was so new at that time. And once the lab results verified Patricia was arrested at her home in North Carolina on June 24, 1997. Now, Sheriff Suzanne Pearson went upstairs with Patricia in her home while she changed her clothes, and they allowed her to say goodbye to her infant daughter, Nicole. The sheriff testified that Patricia began rocking her daughter and apologizing to her, and she took note of what Patricia said to her daughter, which was, quote, Why did I do this, Nicole? If I had known I would get caught, I would have never brought you into this world." And as she was being let out, the sheriff as well as the other officers reported Patricia saying, "I'm never going to see my baby again. I'm going to the electric chair." Admittance. At trial, prosecutor Mike McIntyre acknowledged from the start that his case was based largely on circumstantial evidence, and he called more than 36 witnesses who testified to evidence against Patricia in 8 different areas. Those were motive, opportunity, means, science, gun alibi, lies, and statements, plus no other suspects. Jurors heard about Patricia's breakup with her boyfriend just weeks before Joann and Alex's murders, and they were asked to consider whether she was trying to rebound with Andrew when she made that phone call on December 12th, like she had done in the past. And her ex-boyfriend Walter said that Patricia wanted him to be more like Andrew, and then another ex-boyfriend, said she talked about Andrew all the time and liked to gaze at old photos of him. The finality of Joann's rejection is what the prosecution theorizes motivated Patricia to murder. Patricia's infant died. She wanted to have a baby with Andrew but couldn't, and now she was being cut off of him for good. Patricia became pregnant after she was re-interviewed in April of 1995, and she was accused of getting pregnant in order to gain sympathy. I don't know who was accusing her, but anyway, that's also when she asked her mother, supposedly, to hide a .22 caliber handgun like the one Joann was shot with. After the murders, she dyed her hair darker in case anyone had happened to had seen her in Catasauqua. Patricia's defense emphasized that there was no evidence placing her in the area at the time and dismissed jealousy motive as being ridiculous. The jury disagreed, and on March 7, 2008, after just 2 hours of deliberation, they found her guilty on 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of kidnapping. She received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and after her arraignment, she had to walk past a crowd of dozens of locals screeching, "Hang her, baby killer," while Patricia clung to a Polaroid picture of her little girl. She immediately filed a post-sentencing motion citing 105 claims of counsel ineffectiveness and court error, all of which were denied. Then she filed an appeal stating that her legal counsel didn't effectively argue all 105 claims in her motion, and that was also rejected. Then, in 2005, Patricia was successful in an appeal for nuclear DNA testing for the 6 hairs found in Joann's car, as well as a cigarette butt and a fingernail fragment found with Joann's body. Now, lab results showed that the hairs were indeed Patricia's, and that the blood on them was Joann's. Waka waka. The cigarette butt had Patricia's DNA on it. However, there was not enough genetic material on the fingernail fragment to test it. And in 2006, Patricia petitioned for a new trial, this time claiming that the state withheld a key witness statement. Now, it was this dumb bitch. They just proved that the hair was yours. The court agreed to dispose of the witness, Walter Troutman. In 2006 deposition, Walter claimed he saw Joann Katrinak arguing with her husband around the time she went missing. Walter said he reported that to the police, but they shoved him out of the station and down the stairs, injuring him. Get down, little girl. Sorry. In reality, after Joann and Alex's bodies were found, this Walter guy went to the police 15 times with information about what happened to them. In his first statement, he reported that he saw Joann in her car arguing with a Hispanic man outside her vehicle. And then his statement changed each time he went to the police with information. And when police began to dismiss him, he would scream, act erratically, and needed to be escorted from the building. The court concluded that Walter's statement had no evidentiary value and denied Patricia a new trial. And in 2012, Patricia petitioned for a trial review based on 2 new claims. The first was that the state tampered with the fingernail fragment found with Joann's body so that it could not be DNA tested. And the second was that she should qualify for relief from Miller versus Alabama, which prohibits mandatory life sentences for juvenile offenders. Since Patricia was 30 years old when Joann and Alex were killed, no evidence tampering could be proven, and Patricia's appeal was denied. Why would you file a new petition about the fingernail when the hair was already proven to be yours and it had her blood on it? What difference does the fingernail make? In 2015, Patricia argued that the microscopic hair analysis comparison testimony used at her trial would be inadmissible by today's standards, and this is true according to the FBI's own analysis of forensic hair evidence. However, the hairs weren't just matched. At the time of the trial, the hairs underwent mitochondrial DNA testing, and in 2005, nuclear DNA testing produced the same results. Therefore, the court determined that a new trial recognizing that the hair matching testimony was inaccurate wouldn't produce a different verdict. So Patricia included another point in her 2015 appeal. This woman don't give up. She accused the state of a conspiracy to convict her, claiming that investigators intentionally switched the hairs collected from Joann's vehicle with hairs collected directly from Patricia's head to ensure a match. According to the lab, there were 3 hairs from Joann's vehicle that had roots, and those were sent to the lab in July of 95. But Patricia's hairs weren't collected until November of 95, 4 months later. So her theory went out the door. So the court denied this part of the appeal as well. Now, the last part of her appeal was that the responding officer, there was one officer, Joseph Kiska, to Officer Joseph York, after the fact, stated that he lied about Katrinak's basement door being pried open. So the one officer telling the other officer that he lied. No. However, Officer Kiska denied the conversation, and the other officer attests to the basement door damage. So original statements and police reports show that Andrew did alert officers about the basement door, but they weren't immediately convinced that it was connected to Joann and Alex's disappearance at the time. The court determined that Officer York's contradictory claim wouldn't be enough to warrant a new trial or to produce a different verdict, considering the overwhelming evidence against Patricia, and there was overwhelming evidence against her. Her latest motion was not that long ago. It was back in 2021 when she sought and received documents related to the chain of custody for the hairs in evidence. Now, it was questioned why Andrew waited so long to report his wife and baby missing. I personally don't think it was that long, but Patricia's advocates find it suspicious that he called police 3 times that night to report new information and that the family found the car. I don't find that suspicious at all. The man came home from work. He knew his wife was going to be out Christmas shopping. He knows it's a busy season. He sat down, had a beer, watched some TV. And the fact that he called the police 3 times, Can you imagine the panic he was going through? He called the police, and then, yes, maybe he found other evidence. He called them back. I don't find that suspicious. I think a lot of people do things like that. But anyway, her advocates also questioned that the secondary phone line that was cut in the basement, that phone line ran to Andrew and Joann's bedroom only, and it was located in a hard-to-see area in the basement. Advocates believe that Andrew cut the line himself to stage a break-in and deflect attention from himself. No. This woman at one point lived in that home, so she knew where the phone line was. She had been in that basement. She knew exactly what she was doing. She went in that basement. She cut the phone line. She knew where the phone line led to. Anyway, after learning how Joann died from a gunshot and 19 blows to the head and face, officers quickly theorized that her killer's gun had jammed after the first shot, and then she was beaten to death instead. However, there is no proof that she wasn't beaten first and shot last. Now, the gun jamming theory makes Patricia appear more guilty because her ex-boyfriend originally told investigators that her handgun was junk because it jammed after one shot. Now, they're saying that's not just circumstantial, that's speculation because there's no evidence that the gun killed Joann ever jammed. After Joann and Alex's deaths, Andrew followed through on the plans he and Joann had to move to Colorado. And according to what information I could find, he does currently live in Drake, Colorado. There's some news stories saying that he never remarried. There's other reports saying he did. But it does appear that he had been running his own construction business, Keystone Construction. I don't know that he still is. He's up there in age. I think he's probably retired by now. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story. I'd love to hear what you think about it. Put your thoughts down below. Do you believe Patricia killed Joann and Alex? I do. I think there's enough evidence proving that she did it. She's filed enough things that were thrown back in her face. There's enough evidence showing that she did it. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Put them down below. And I will go ahead and see you guys next time in the next video.